this computer. Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. On the program, we are rejoined on this beautiful final day of Black History Month, at least in Turtle Island, with Dr. Jared Ball. He hosts I Mix What I Like, and he also co-host panelist of Earn Your Liberation and member of the Remix Morning Show, all of which you can find at Black Power Media, which is news, commentary, critical analysis from a Black leftist perspective. He is also the author of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, Media, Race, and Economics. Its second edition is out now. Having read the first edition, talking to Jared a lot and listening to him on this topic, it is one of the finest and arguably most important anti-capitalist books out there, especially for large and small minority communities in settler colonial societies and capitalist societies. And Jared is a frequent guest on this show. And each time, and I was just telling you, Jared, each time you or someone from BPM comes on 1+1, we get lots of views, lots of praise, lots of attention, lots of feedback, mostly positive. So, Jared, my man, welcome back to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Although you left out that I sidekick for Saturdays with Renee, who I know you just had a great discussion with recently.
Yes, so. Exactly. I make sure to put that in my final notes because I also forgot to mention.
That has to. I have to make sure that's in my bio nowadays too. She's
brilliant,
big time, doing great work.
Exactly, and she was a fantastic guest when when we had her on, and lots and so big shout out to Renee. So Jared, it's always always an honor to have you on. My first question is, and I know in the second edition of your book, which smashes the myth that's Black capitalism and Black America being this Black Wall Street from the past, or a neo-Black Chinatown, or a neo-Black Little Italy, or Black Jewish Italian town. won't help Black America or similar Americas pull themselves by the bootstraps or lift the rising tide of boats, or however that stupid metaphor goes. However, you told me during the online launch of the second edition of your book that you do not go into a critical leftist critique of Ice Cube's America's Black Contract. Now, I've not listened to interviews of Cube explaining why Black America should advocate this. I do know that he spends a lot of time engaging with libertarian, idiot libertarian RFK Jr., Pumpkinhead, Dodgy Donnie Trump, who's running for president, Fucker Carlson, Bill Maher, ultra-Zionist douchebag who claims he's an atheist who hates all religions equally, but Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. And I know that Ice Cube goes a lot on Joe Rogan type of people, and on Black corporate media, advocating America's Black contract. So, briefly, if it's even possible, explain why Ice Cube's America's Black Contract is not the economic salvation America needs to end the cycle of intergenerational trauma and chronic poverty.
Well, I don't want to. I am not an expert on Ice Cube's contract. What I have seen be emphasized in discussion of it is its support for Black entrepreneurialism and pushing a sort of like maybe a privatized version of what we've seen from the corporate world post George Floyd, where billions of dollars will be invested in job training and small business development, and with the idea from the perspective of the handful of, and I don't mean to suggest there aren't many, but the relatively well-positioned, because there are many Black business owners, but in terms of those who are positioned relatively within the economy and the business community to truly exploit this situation, it's a smaller amount, and the Ice Cubes of the world want to be positioned to get their cut. So that's, and then it's just, again, from my limited perspective, it's an extension of, again, this long form argument against Black people organizing politically and having all of our hopes and dreams and aspirations tied to the biggest business acumen of a few in the community. And that's, so it's great. Of course, it'll be well supported, at least nominally, by people on the right. And as you said, what did you say? The idlibs, the
libertarians, yeah. Idiot liberals.
Yeah,
but particularly
right, sorry.
but particularly the idiot libertarians like RFK Jr., Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, I love your anti-imperialism, don't like your socioeconomics, so apologies for calling you an idiot. But yes, but he very much does engage with with basically people who are part of the libertarian movement, which if you're an anti-capitalist, if you're a Marxist, or if you're somebody such as yourself, in which you have said, look, guys, if you're looking for solutions, don't read my book and don't ask me for like...
Well, I need to check. Okay. If that's what I've conveyed, I do need to check that a little bit. And in fact, since we mentioned her literally yesterday, Renee sort of re-emphasized for me in a conversation about this issue of solutions.
Okay.
What my argument actually is or should be, or in terms of emphasis.
Well, actually, let me just say this so that we don't get derailed.
Okay.
What I mean is that, okay, so what I mean is that, your solution is, is a left-wing solution. It's Black Leftism and Black Leftism working with other marginalized groups and the larger working class, which is which will end the cycle of poverty and whatnot, not Black capitalism. In a nutshell.
That's good enough. Good enough, certainly for now. So yeah. But what I like about what Renee was encouraging me to think in terms of this question about my argument around solutions is that I am arguing that my solution is we get past the mythology that Black capitalism and its variants can lead us anywhere. So that is my solution. And I agree with her that I want to start to rebrand, pun intended, my argument around solutions, because what I advocate in the book, for instance, is a solution. It's just not a solution that Black capitalists and entrepreneurs want to hear, because it's not emphasizing their interests. It's emphasizing the collective's interest. Mm-hmm. And it's emphasizing a move to real political power, which is, I think, a bit more, it's particularly in this environment, more complicated to identify and clarify and to achieve than it is to at least clarify, identify, and claim that Black business is a solution, because the achievement obviously is not there. It doesn't achieve anything. It never has in terms of the benefit for the collective. So, I just wanted to say that that's what I'm advocating, that my solution is we move past the mythology of Black capitalism and its variants, meaning buy Black, bank Black, buy where you can't, don't buy where you can't work, going back 100 years. Whatever else, circulate the dollar.
Also move beyond the myth, which you say is a myth of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, or we could have like our own Chinatown, our own Koreatown, our own little Italy. Or if we just got rid of all of those Korean store merchants and we were the ones in charge, we'll be very generous with our minimum wage and all of that stuff. And I think the reason why so many people have that idea, And this is why it's so sad that Glenn Ford, unfortunately, is not here with us, because there's a lot of stuff he often says about the Black community, which I don't agree with. For example, Glenn Ford often says that Black people, we are the most we're the most left-wing constituency and so forth like that. And I always wanted to challenge Glenn on that because a lot of Black people I know are not socially liberal, and when they hear folks like you, folks like Glenn Ford, they think that y'all are in crazy town, and that come on, we need a version of Black capitalism to get us there. And I'm sorry, but your brothers and friends are all way too harsh on Obama and so forth like that. So I always sort of disagreed with Glenn when he would often brag about how the Black community, the Black American community, was the most left constituency, especially on well, particularly when it came to war and peace, and I think socioeconomics. But
so that was, but that's a key.
That,
that's an important point, and I think, with all due respect, of course, it would be better if Glenn were here.
Yeah,
for many reasons, but Glenn, to my memory, was not bragging when he would make this point. His point was to bring this up to say, whenever we see Black people siding with conservative politics, we should see that as being something, as a newer development in response to itself an attempt to negate Black people's past radicalism, or as a reminder of where Black people have traditionally been and should be. So he wasn't just cheerleading, and he was making it and tying it specifically to certain points around war, employment,
socioeconomics, at least. Yeah.
So maybe, and even if I remember correctly, he was acknowledging that there was an attempt to shift this. So maybe there has been a shift even since his death, where Black people are, but that would have been something that was itself, to the extent, if it's true at all, would be itself a construct of a post Black liberation, post Obama moment, where people are saying, even after 8 years of that dude, we don't have anything. So maybe
although I will say,
all we
although I will say the Africans I know, and I mean real, and I mean Africans from the continent, from Congo, which is where my mother is from, and the and the very few Black people I knew in my in the school I went to, elementary, middle, and high school, the International School of Brussels, one of the most expensive schools you can go to in Belgium if you want to learn English. And even the very few Black people I do come across, the very rare times I have been to the U.S. since moving out of there over 12 years ago. New York's the only other state I actually have been to. Apart from California, the very few Black people I come across, they might come from a Black working class background, but the ones I know often come from a black middle class, or certainly a Black upper class, an affluent class, in which it's normal that they would be attracted to somebody like Obama. They would prop up somebody like a Louis Farrakhan, or they think that it's only because of African tribalism and African corruption and us not getting our shit together, not ongoing US, Canadian, Anglo imperialism, and even French imperialism, why we're still in the mess we're in Africa. So yeah, so of course, if I give them
I think I rest my case, right?
Yeah. So if I give, so because in fact I actually was even talking to an elder, a brother, a Black capitalist. We got into a bit of a scuffle about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. and about the Democrats and stuff like that. And what did I want to? Oh wait, what was it that he said? I need to try to remember this. Well, anywho, I think, anywho, when I come across, when I come across people like that, of course, when they listen to the Glenn Fords of the world, or when they listen to you or others from BPM, their conclusion is, I agree with some of what they say, but I don't agree with them on Obama. I know somebody who claims she loves Margaret Kimberly, is always excited when I have Margaret Kimberly on the show. But this same person, we get into 2 hour long arguments about Obama's legacy, and if she knows Margaret Kimberly, she would know that nigga hates Obama. So and I don't get how people say that, I like Glenn Ford, really respected him, but the main thing about Glenn Ford, his main piece, his raison d'etre, was he was a critic of Obama, and he had legitimate criticisms of Obama, and yet these people can and yet these people can just block that out. So I'm curious your thought before we talk about MLK Jr. I'm curious on that.
Uh, Glenn was right on many things, including Obama. And
Especially Obama.
and I don't know. It's weird. I feel a need. Not that I don't think you meant it this way, but I feel a need to defend the against the claim. What did you say? It was his raison d'etre was to attack. No, Glenn was a Marxist-Leninist revolutionary who performed journalism. Obama showed up into that context and performed his neo-colonial duty, which of course then would attract the attention of a Glenn Ford and his crew. So I just don't, I don't want it to be, I don't want anyone to hear this and think it, especially not knowing Glenn's work,
Okay.
to think that he only existed to go at Obama. No, Obama showed up into a context that Glenn was already struggling in, and showed up as a part of an effort to negate the work Glenn was doing. So of course, Glenn and anyone else in that space,
Bruce Dixon, we can't forget Bruce Dixon.
Margaret Kimberly, at the time, to myself to a lesser extent.
Jacqueline Luqman's late husband, who I also think doesn't get enough due diligence.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so all of us at the time and now were responding. Oh, Obama showed up into this mix. We were already here, and he's acting on behalf of those against whom we've been struggling. So, and we, of course, as someone running for the president of the United States, as its first Black president, there was obviously going to be attention brought to it. So I just felt the need to.
No problem.
Yeah.
And great, and great that we mentioned him on Black History Month. All right, onto this onto the second question I wanted to ask you. Now, I also wanted your thoughts, since it's Black History Month. It's the end of Black History Month, and I think Martin Luther King Jr. Day has already passed, and I wanted your thoughts on this bizarre half promotion and egregious censorship of MLK Jr.'s philosophy, which leftists or left-leaning people engage in, which is the following. So we know MLK Jr. was a socialist, very much a fairly radical social racial justice advocate, activist. Folks like us and our audience know that MLK Jr. was an anti-imperialist, and he believed both of those issues were linked, and you can't have a great society continue the New Deal and whatnot and speak about racial social justice and support any kind of imperialism, militarism, especially if you think capitalism has severe limitations and you're a critic of capitalism. So why is it Bernie Sanders censors this about MLK Jr. when he talks about MLK Jr.'s Poor People's Campaign, Why is Reverend William Barber III and the Moral Mondays and others who claim to continue MLK Jr.'s Poor People's campaigns, they are not only excluding indigenous people, which is another topic for another day, but that's just my pet peeve because I believe in solidarity for indigenous people, but that racial justice movements, but they're silent and de facto support American imperialism, exceptionalism. Ukraine is one example. Israel is one of the best examples, and elsewhere. Your response?
Well, I don't know as much about Reverend Barber's arguments as Bernie Sanders, and I don't know as much about Bernie Sanders' arguments as I do about King, as I do King's. So, but what I would really just sort of start and maybe leave it with is that most people who popularly reference King do so out of some either willfully ignorant or accidentally ignorant lack of understanding of who King actually was and what he actually advocated and why he was targeted and assassinated. Mm-hmm. And, or maybe they do know, and that's why they don't advocate, they don't take the positions he took. So they're just, Sanders is not actually advocating for socialism and never has. And I've never really appreciated him being associated with the concept of socialism because I don't think he represents it well. Reverend Barber, I don't know as much about, but if he's not, other than that, I know he's been a popular supporter of Democratic Party politics and the Democratic Party nominees, and that already puts him to the right of King.
He certainly was more supportive of the Sanders faction, which I welcome people who are supporters of Sanders type of politics. I have nothing against Bernie Sanders on the domestic front. Sure. I have a shitload of problems with Bernie Sanders when it comes to imperialism and so forth, and him being a chump for the Democrat. Anyways, that's we're going.
But that's sort of my point. But that's sort of my point.
But what made King indeed, William Barber does prop up. But he does prop up the Democrats in the end of the day, and thinking that you can reform and change the Democrats.
So that, well, in terms of Sanders, that's sort of my point, that you can't be claiming anything akin to King or anything akin to actual socialism and have such contradictions in your so-called domestic and foreign policies. What happens here is intimately linked to what happens overseas. So and King understood this. So that's why he stood against Vietnam and imperialism, not because he cared more about people overseas than he did about people here, or Black people in particular, but because he understood we can't have Black freedom on the backs of people being bombed in other countries, particularly Black and brown countries. The idea that the United States was at war with some fascist, encroaching, white supremacist threat, as was I think largely falsely branded in connection to World War II, that's not happening. So you can't be supporting this military machine doing its thing and then think you're going to benefit over here. So that's, I mean, a lot of what people have to do in the Democratic Party and more liberal politics is co-opt the messaging and the symbols and the narratives of people to their left. And to the extent that any of us are unaware of the differences or unwilling to confront those differences, we're going to suffer. So, but yeah, I think one good clear marker is is that defense and support willingly of the lesser of evil electoral politics. That is a clear point of demarcation from where King and many others to the left of that were and were clear about. So if people want to argue why King and others were wrong and then move on, we could disagree, and I think that's more principled. But to say that their work is the extension of King and those traditions is misleading.
In fact, I think that's actually a perfect segue. I'm actually going to switch my questions around. I had something about Fred Hampton, but I'm going to save that for actually as a last or second to last question. I wanted to talk to you about Bayard Rustin, who was part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s entourage and organizations. He helped the March on Washington, particularly with the socio-economic, racial, social justice message, which got censored by the Kennedys. He's often seen as one of the more leftist factions of MLK Jr.'s close allies, but he was thrown under the bus for apparently being too left-wing and for being, a gay man. I want to know what's your assessment of his legacy. Was he a good activist who later became a Black misleadership class member? Or was he always someone who was a Black misleadership class and grifter like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, or Cyril Ramaphosa, or a mixed bag at best? The reason why I'm curious your response, not only because they're doing a movie about him, but Ben Norton, formerly of The Gray Zone, a great media critic and geocritic, leftist anti-imperialist who hosts his own geopolitical economy report, like you, former contributor to The Real News, Salon Alternet. I think he still sometimes does contributions for fairness and accuracy in reporting. Ben has claimed oftentimes that Rustin was part of the Democratic Socialists of America, and he often was an anti-communist leftist who engaged in self-McCarthyism and not having leftists in the U.S. engage in radical anti-imperialism activities. So yeah, I'm curious your response.
So again, I'm no you all of your questions are in areas that are not my expertise. So that's so again, I have to say
you're being too modest. Everybody who comes on 1+1 is always very modest about their knowledge.
It's anyway. Not modest. It's not modesty. It's accuracy. But what I will say is that I think for the most part I like how the summary you shared from Ben. What I will say is that how Rustin is currently being popularly presented in several major media pieces, including from the Obama's film production studios.
Which is why I ain't gonna watch it, which is why I'm boycotting it.
Well, I watched it, and then I saw another similar rendition of Rustin in what was the other one I just saw?
The Oprah one.
I don't think this was the Oprah one.
Selma, the one that was done by Selma.
Ava DuVernay. No, this was more recent. I'm talking about very recent. Man, what was I watching? It was the Genius series from National Geographic that is comparing Malcolm and Martin, and they have another rendition of Rustin. And in both of these, in Rustin the film and in this series, one thing is very clearly happening in both, which is largely off camera, although more so, not so much in the Rustin film, but still, the Black Power movement is reduced and negatively branded through the characterization of Adam Clayton Powell, whose criticism of Rustin as being an inappropriate representative of the march is used to condemn, I think, broadly the notion of toxic masculinity and more importantly, the notion of Black power, which is described as being toxically masculine. So whatever Rustin was in real life, he's being used now as to pit the LGBTQ plus IA plus struggle against the Black liberation struggle, and to condemn the Black liberation struggle as being, again, toxically masculine and inappropriate. The last, this does comport with what I have read of Rustin at the end of his life, where he did say something very much to the effect that we are past the Black. So, it was like 1987, I think he said something like, we're past the civil rights thing. Now it's about the gay struggle, which was wrong then. It's inappropriate to pit them against one another now, and it's inappropriate to disassociate the Black LGBT community from the Black community and only associate them with this broad, everyone else is
brother,
involved.
Preach. Speak the truth. Yes.
So, by the way, and then to be fair also, all of Rustin's prior involvement with communism is largely suppressed. And communism as a concept in these media pieces is never explored honestly. So it's again, I think in a similar way to what I was trying to say about Bernie Sanders and perhaps Reverend Barber, their presentation of King and their presentation of socialism is done to negate what those things actually are. And I think that's what I'm seeing of Rustin or his depiction, certainly in these more recent media pieces.
In other words, folks, if you want to know a lot about Bayard Rustin, contact somebody at Black Power Media, contact somebody at Black Agenda Report or Hood Communism, and I can tell you, even if you may disagree with their conclusions, you'll be much better informed than corporate media, in which the more you watch, the less you know, the more you read corporate media outlets, the less you know. And that's a perfect segue. I say rest in power to Bayard Rustin, and I think we need to take him. We need to take the good, ignore. We need to take the good, push aside the bad. But a historical figure like that, W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm and Martin Luther King Jr., we need to study them, but certainly not study them through the frames of idlibs, idiot liberals, idiot libertarians, and the capitalist scumbags. Now, Jared, perfect segue to this question, which is continuing from that, from all we've just talked about, and an extension of previous conversations. What did Fred Hampton, who you often, who I know is a hero of yours, you always quote him when you're saying peace out and saying goodbye to us. What did Fred Hampton really say about working class people of all races uniting? And why do white leftists who claim to love Fred Hampton because, like MLK Jr., he believed in solidarity and uniting amongst working class of all backgrounds, and they'll often say that Hampton did engage and convert white supremacists to his racial justice, anti-imperialist Marxist cause, but that doesn't mean white leftists who are too tired of wokeism and superficial identity politics, who are very transphobic and queerphobic, except for the LGB, but might be good on anti-imperialism. What do they get wrong when they advocate the left-right alliance and they criticize Jackie Luqman and Black Alliance for Peace and Black Agenda Reports and yours truly, Black Power Media, when y'all don't want to encourage allies to join the Rage Against the War Machine rally? What's wrong with y'all?
Well, I mean, again, Hampton was not advocating that we unite with people who are imperialist, capitalist, white supremacists because we have an overlapping disagreement with a particular war effort. That wasn't the Rainbow Coalition that Fred Hampton advocated was one based on revolutionary politics. So it wasn't again, converting white supremacists who were to hold on to their white supremacy because we both disagree for different reasons on a particular war. It was showing them or giving them a chance to be introduced, as I would prefer to say, giving them a chance to reconnect with their own actual radical traditions and realize that there is an issue of an economy and a social order and a pitting of labor against each other. And the Black and brown worker and person, you may not love them, but they're not your enemy, and they're put in a position in this economy to be specifically used to draw down your own wages and make you suffer. So again, but what it gets rebranded as by people who are not truly adherents or even interested in exploring the actual politics of Hampton and the like, it can get easily rebranded into, well, we all have.
Would you like to name any names?
I mean, we already had our thing with the gray zone, and I thought, and I've already said Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate were disingenuous in their public engagement and use of my name personally, and reference to Jackie and reference to our platform. And there was never an attempt to honestly build with us on why we would disagree with that particular coalition. And I thought it countered all of our previous engagement. I had interviewed them. I was a supporter of their platform and learned from them.
In fact, I have to say, sorry to interrupt, the best conversation I've ever heard about Black and white Jewish relations and Malcolm X and whatnot was you on Moderate Rebels with Ben Norton and Max Blumenthal, and I'm sorry about falling out that happened.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, that even came about because I reached out to them and said, I think in the aftermath of something with Nick Cannon or something, I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those, or one of the early, I can't remember what it was. But I was saying, if there's anybody that I would think outside of the Black community that I would have wanted to talk to about this and have an honest conversation, it was with them. And so that's why it's like, so it's a really funky turn that they made. And then the way that I thought that they did or didn't engage afterwards was, but whatever. The point is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think of them or vice versa. The reality is, in terms of the question, what was Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition? It wasn't that. And anybody that would argue that they're following Fred Hampton's tradition, as did Max at one point, by forming that coalition, doesn't understand what Fred Hampton was doing and is exposing yet again the cavernous gaps between the white and Black left that still exist, that have always been a problem.
Which you also think is which you also think another perfect example of that is Norman Finkelstein and his new rampage against identity politics gone mad and so forth. And while I did,
I mean, all he did, sorry to cut you off now, but all Norman Finkelstein did at the end of the day, and it is disappointing to me. It's just, well, again, but regardless how I feel about it, what he did though was expose that tradition of the white left not properly engaging or appreciating or truly respecting Black thought, Black intellectual, Black activism, Black scholarship, and that's what that book, I think, did. And then in addition to, I think, a couple of other little faux pas here or there, little issues here or there, but that in general, that is what I think he was doing there, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean,
and by the way, while I'm here, it's also unfortunate that Aaron Mate's crew, Katie Halper and them. Now, I haven't watched her show in a minute, but I thought it was kind of trifling that in the immediate aftermath of my critical exchange with Finkelstein, they have him on with Barbara Smith and Robin Kelly, which was, I think, a continuation of the issue I had with Aaron Mate around them big time in me with bigger Black scholars, and they are, when I have a legitimate and quite accurate, by the way, assessment of a situation. So when Aaron Mate interviewed Peniel Joseph, and I reach out to Aaron at the time, I thought we were at least respectfully, we've never been friends, but respectful. And I said, Aaron, you're interviewing, this is the guy you get to talk about Black history. Let me help you out. And his response at the end of the day was, well, Gerald Horne supports him. And I get it. So who the fuck is Jared if Gerald Horne supports him? But it still disrespects my very accurate critique of Peniel Joseph's work. And then it also, more importantly, disrespects the broader tradition of a Black left, Black radical, not only movement and tradition radically organizationally, but intellectual production and scholarship that that Peniel exists to negate, or is platformed, I shouldn't say exists to negate. He is positioned to negate. So then when we raise our hands and say, your coalition here under the banner of a new Fred Hampton is some nonsense, and then you come back with, I'm sorry, when Finkelstein, and I'm saying you perform this again in the context of critiquing Ibram Kendi, the very critiquable Ibram Kendi, and then the response is from Katie Halper, we'll just go get Robin Kelly and Barbara Smith, who Robin Kelly, all due respect to, incorrectly supported Peniel Joseph. And so my point is, they both, in each case, they reach out, not out of expertise, not out of an affinity for, not out of a deep engagement with the work of these bigger scholars, but as a way to negate the critique they don't want to have to deal with. And it's easy, and to be fair, I can't, like, I'm not on their level.
But it also goes back to that thing of confirmation bias. Like when I asked you about the legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois, I believe like I was asking you, was he really somebody that we should be celebrating, like Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, and Martin Luther King Jr.? Because I always hear a lot of people criticizing him as a Black leadership class person, and I'm always seeing this
Du Bois?
And you were saying that the people who say that about W.E.B. Du Bois are people who are just looking for a confirmation bias and are selectively or not properly reading all of his work and whatnot. And it's kind of the same thing when people prop up certain Black leftists as, oh yes, identity politics, it's gone too far.
Well, I mean,
it's gone too far. Or people who are saying that Fred Hampton would have marched with the kind of far right people we're seeing nowadays, who are only against the Ukraine war. They don't give a fuck about Congo, Haiti, or even the plight of Native Americans, at home.
Let me just say this, because just for the sake of time, and unfortunately, because my time is a little bit short today. But listen, what I think, not that you're wrong, but you're doing more than I'm attempting to do. All I've really been trying to do these last 5 or 10 rambling minutes is raise again, I think, an important critique about the relationship between the nominal, or the so-called white left, and the Black left and Black freedom struggle, to the extent it exists in whatever form. And that there is this legacy sorry about that. That
Nah,
King pointed out, Malcolm pointed out, Asada has pointed out, Daruba has pointed out, so many have pointed out. There's this legacy of a problem with the white left not actually engaging the ideas of the Black community and not actually engaging the scholarship and the thought and the radicalism. So so this is why I'm saying, using these examples, it's very easy for them to reach out to the legitimately more prominent scholars who I think on the issue of Peniel Joseph and one or two other areas are flawed, and to use them to prop up, to your point, the confirmation bias and a pre-existing preferred space. And to also, in this case, give legitimacy to a critique that is uninformed.
Yeah, no, but that it's our community that focuses way too much on identity politics, and if we just focused on class and more anti-imperialist stuff, then we would all be able to vanquish all of the problems of the world. When really, no, they're just, well, anyways. But yeah.
Well, I mean, there is, again, to equate the struggle over self-definition in the Black or African struggle with silly pop cultural, quote unquote, identity politics is wildly mistaken. There's an element of that is an unfortunate misreading and misunderstanding of a Marxist critique of identity and a sort of fake left. But then there's this sort of general white people don't engage Black thinking sort of problem. And that's and that was my humble attempt to engage Finkelstein. And then I see, the response to sort of cover that, or similarly to cover the engagement with a preferred fake conservative so-called rainbow coalition under the guise of Fred. Again, so I mean, all of it is born of that similar that problem. White people don't want to engage Black thinking, and it's inhibiting.
I just want to say, in the beginning, I was actually on the side of Jimmy Dore, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Matze, and those on the white left-leaning left, the white anti-imperialist, who said that we need to do this left-right alliance with the Mises Institute and all of those far-right libertarians.
You were in agreement with that?
In the beginning, but in the beginning, but listen. In the beginning, we don't have enough. We don't have enough time. But in the beginning, I was on their side. But when I actually listened more to Jackie's live stream and what you were saying on the Remix Morning Show and others, and when I started to look deeper into what a lot of the far libertarian so forths are engaging in, I then came to the conclusion I was on your side. I had Tyler Shipley on the show from Canada explaining why we need to not have a left-right alliance, but just grow the left. So
that's correct, by the way.
Jared, Jared, just before you go, we don't have much time. I just want to say, on the Remix Morning Show, when it comes to Diddy, I disagree with you all, and I just want to say innocence until proven guilty. and that's it. And that even if Diddy is guilty, I won't mute him, and I still think it's okay to be a fan of his music and all things associated with him. I'll just want.
So that's fine. We don't have to agree. Beyond the whole notion of broadly believe women or Black women or Black, in this case, Black men or whoever's who believe the claim, whatever. I am biased by a long history of Diddy either having similar claims, other abusive hostile relationships, both in terms of relationship, romantic or business. But I also will acknowledge I have been an advocate of him being silenced or canceled or negated, at least, for decades. Not because, and for reasons of corruption of the art, betrayal of traditions with the art, the reduction of the beautiful art of even of sampling to just ripping off. So I don't, so we disagree on the claims against him, thumbs again. We also disagree on his value previously. So free to locks. Rest in peace, Biggie. Rest in peace, Craig Mack. Rest in peace, all the others.
We will respectfully agree to disagree. And I just want to say, as much as we do need to smash the patriarchy, innocence until proven guilty is just as important as that. Anywho, well, we were joined on this edition, because he has to go, unfortunately. We were joined on this edition of 1+1 with the fella cootie of journalism, of Black Leftist revolutionary journalism, Jared Ball, a media critic, NGO critic, member of Black Power Media. He's on Remix morning shows, Earn Your Liberation, Saturdays with Renee, and the host of I Mix What I Like, which is actually mocking DJ Clue, funny enough. He's professor of communications and Africana, African diaspora studies at Morgan State University, author of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, Media, Race, and Economics. Its second edition is out. Check him out. Donate generously to his outlets, BPM, and get his books. Jared, always an honor to talk to you. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
And by the way, next time we have you on, let's go after the music industry. And I know, and by the way, my comrades at Orinoco Tribune, we would be interested in moderating a debate on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So if you know anyone who wants to have that debate, we are ready to moderate and live stream and live stream this. And also an open invitation to you if you're interested in having a debate on if wars are ever justifiable for World Beyond War. And thank you so much to you. Keep up the great work you're doing. Give my best to the Black Power Media family, especially Diallo, Renee, Geechee, and Miss Lukman and Miss Brown and Mr. Chenga, who couldn't do the show, and also Daru.
So in other words, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. The entire family.
Okay.
Especially the ones who have been on the show.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Peace to you, your audience. It's been great. Thanks again.
Oh, don't forget to sign off the way Fred Hampton would.
Peace if you're willing to fight for it. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. That's it. Yeah. Peace.
Thank you so much. And happy Black History Month, everybody.
Likewise.